Imagine being invisible for years, working in a grand mansion, cleaning up after the rich and powerful, never noticed, never valued. Now imagine being invited to their biggest night, only to realize it's not a kindness, but a cruel joke meant to humiliate you in front of everyone. This is the story of Victoria Thames, a woman who was written off as nothing until she took back everything. There was a woman named Victoria Thames. For 2 long years, she had worked quietly as a cleaning lady in the grandest mansion in New York City, the home of Richard Blackwood, a wealthy and powerful man. To Richard and his guests, Victoria was invisible. She was just part of the furniture, someone to clean up after the rich, to keep things perfect without anyone really noticing her. Every day, Victoria scrubbed the floors, dusted the chandeliers, and polished the marble. She moved through the halls with quiet grace, but never spoke unless spoken to. The rich guests never greeted her, never smiled her way. She was there, but it was as if she did not exist. Then, one day, everything changed. Richard Blackwood himself handed Victoria a golden invitation. It was for his charity gala, a glamorous night where the city's wealthiest gathered to celebrate and show off their riches. Victoria stared at the invitation in disbelief. Why would Richard invite her? Was it a mistake? As the days passed, Victoria felt a mix of hope and fear. Maybe this was her chance to be seen. Maybe this was a way out of the shadows. But deep down, she worried it might be a cruel trick. When the night of the gala arrived, the mansion was alive with excitement. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, laughter filled the air, and everyone was dressed in their finest gowns and suits. The grand hall was a palace of wealth and power. Victoria walked in wearing a dress that took every eye. It wasn't a cheap gown rented for the night. No, this dress was special. It belonged to her mother, who had danced in ballrooms just like this decades before. The dress was a symbol of a past that Richard Blackwood had tried to erase. As Victoria descended the grand marble staircase, whispers and snickers filled the room. The guests called her the cleaning lady, a joke, a spectacle to mock. They thought she would be ashamed, that she would shrink away from their scorn. But Victoria held her head high. She looked Richard in the eye and said calmly, "I feel exactly where I belong." The room grew quiet. Victoria began to tell her story, a story no one wanted to hear. She spoke of her mother, Isabella Thames, who had once been a Blackwood before the family tried to bury the truth. She told them about her father, Henry Blackwood, a man with secrets, a man who had loved and protected her even when others refused to. Richard laughed at first, but then Victoria showed the Blackwood family ring, a ring that once belonged to her mother, a ring Henry had given in love. The air was heavy as Victoria called forth witnesses, a brave journalist, a wise lawyer, and the family doctor, all ready to reveal the truth hidden beneath the glittering surface of the gala. The night that was meant to humiliate Victoria was turning into something no one expected, a night that would shake the very foundations of the Blackwood name. As the night wore on, Victoria stood tall and strong. She was no longer just the cleaning lady. She was the truth, the voice that had been silenced for too long. She revealed a secret that shook the entire room. Henry Blackwood, the powerful man who had once ruled this family, had a hidden past. He was her father, a man who loved her mother, Isabella Thames, and who wanted to protect them both. But Richard Blackwood, Henry's own son, had tried to erase them from the family story. When Henry died, Richard took control and pretended Victoria and her mother never existed. Victoria didn't stop there. She showed the guests the Blackwood engagement ring, the proof of a love and promise that Richard wanted buried. Then, one by one, her witnesses stepped forward. Diane Morrison, a fearless investigative journalist, shared secret recordings, Richard's voice, ordering lies and cover-ups. David Chun, a wise inheritance lawyer, spoke of altered wills and stolen fortunes. And Dr. Hamilton, the family doctor, his hands trembling, revealed a terrible truth. Henry Blackwood had not died peacefully. He was slowly poisoned over months, a secret Richard tried desperately to hide. The grand hall, once filled with laughter, now held a heavy silence. The wealthy guests watched as a world of greed, lies, and betrayal was uncovered before their eyes. Richard's wife, Helena, faced him with horror as whispers grew louder, turning into accusations. Friends and allies turned away, no longer willing to stand by a man exposed as a criminal. Victoria announced her plans to fight, to file a lawsuit for wrongful death and stolen inheritance. She spoke of justice, not revenge, and her promise to protect others from suffering as she had. Outside, the sound of police sirens grew nearer. Richard begged for mercy, but Victoria's heart was firm. 20 years of silence and pain demanded more than forgiveness. They demanded truth. Richard was arrested, charged with murder, fraud, and lies that had poisoned a family and a fortune. Months later, Victoria sat in the office Richard had once ruled. But now, it was hers, a place where fairness and kindness would grow. She rebuilt the company, raising wages and helping the community. She started programs for scholarships, loans, and support for those in need. Helena divorced Richard, thankful for Victoria's mercy toward her children. Dr. Hamilton, inspired by Victoria's courage, joined her team to help others heal. The people who once mocked Victoria now asked for her friendship, but she kept her distance. She had risen not for their praise, but to change what power truly meant. Letters came from prison, Richard confessing, his children wanting to meet their aunt. Victoria kept the letters, but did not reply. Forgiveness was hers to give, on her own time. In interviews, when asked if she was too harsh, Victoria said, "Revenge would be doing to him what he did to me. Justice means making sure no one else suffers as I did." At home, Victoria embraced a new family. 2 orphan girls she adopted, giving them the love and chance she once dreamed of. She thought often of Henry Blackwood, knowing he would be proud, not because she took what was hers, but because she changed a legacy of cruelty into one of hope. Richard tried to humiliate a cleaning lady, but in the end, he revealed a powerful truth. The person you ignore may be the strongest of all. Victoria Thames was no longer invisible. She was a force for change, proof that dignity cannot be bought or stolen. It must be earned.